close to your head. Don't want that. Why? Now, you might not want to take my word, but you can go buy the tester and scan it, and it will show you on how much it's emanating from it. But let's say I don't want to spend money. Trust me, I've been there. The reason why people are like that is because it's body, and then it turns into that. But the mind remembers how much, even though you're not thinking it. Oh, it does, I think. Anyways, the alarm clock. Don't want to buy the tester? Because if you put by it, like, oh, you can check out my YouTube videos. I got a YouTube video on that. I got one on alarm clocks, Xboxes, cell phones, all of them. They all, oh, and even the light bulbs. I want to say incandescent. Yeah, the little curly cubes or whatever. Those produce radio waves. And you can test that with it's kind of like fight fire with fire. But you can take an AM radio, yeah, you might have to Google that. Like, what's an AM radio? I just make you laugh again. Oh, anyways, so you get an AM radio, 1400, I believe. Just turn it to a static place. And if you can't get it, just keep doing it over and over again. And then shove it up by your monitor. Yeah, your monitor emanates 1, 2 emanates. Shoots out, squirts at you. I don't know what you want. I just made you laugh again.
My name's Craig Summers. I'm a naturopath, and today I'm going to teach you how to do an electromagnetic field inspection of your home using a Gauss meter. This Gauss meter measures electromagnetic radiation. So first we'll set this Gauss meter to 0 to 100, which is the top scale. And notice we're on 0 right now. In this light fixture behind me, we have a compact fluorescent bulb. Compact fluorescent bulbs do create electromagnetic radiation. Notice that as I bring the meter very close to the light, we're getting a pretty high reading. And we move it away from the light, just about 1.5 feet away, it drops off to 0. So the safe distance to this compact fluorescent is further than 1.5 feet away. Now let's come over to a regular incandescent bulb, like in this light fixture right here. And you'll notice when we bring the meter up, nothing happens. Because this type of bulb does not create any type of electromagnetic radiation at all. In this light fixture behind me, I have an LED, which are my favorite type of bulbs. And as I bring this meter up to the bulb, you'll notice that there is no field either in an LED light. Now, these are my bulbs of choice, not just because they don't create any electromagnetic field, but because they're very energy efficient. Regular incandescent bulbs burn a lot of electricity. Let's see what an air purifier does now. Down here on the floor, I have a HEPA air filter. And right now it's plugged in but not on. And I'll put this meter on the machine. And you see we have a very slight field right there. Just a little bit. Let's turn the filter on. I have that set on 2. Notice we pinned over 100 milligauss. When we move away, we see it's dropping off. It's still pretty high. Now, at about 4 feet or so, it drops down into the safe zone. You start to get closer to it, pops up again. We'll move on this direction. And you notice by the time you reach my bed, it's dropped off. So I keep this air filter at least 4 feet away from my bed to ensure that the electromagnetic radiation is not penetrating my body while I sleep. We'll go ahead and shut off that air filter. Needle drops down. Now let's see what an electric heater can do. Over here I have one of these oil-filled electric heaters, and it's on. You can see by the light there. Bring it over, and you see we have a slight field right up next to it. Not that high. You get some right out of the side, but just that short distance, 2 feet, it drops off completely. Let's move on over now, and we'll check to see what a stereo does. Well, there's a slight field right up next to the stereo, but drops off fairly quickly as you move away. How about televisions? Okay, first we'll try the television. It's off, and you notice right up against it we have a reading of about 3, just a hair over the 3 mark, just above the safe zone. Let's see the back of the television. You can get back there, and we notice, yeah, there's a little bit coming out the back as well. Now let's turn her on. Bam. Needle jump way up. So now I'm up at about 100, close to 100 milligauss. Watch that needle. What's the safe distance from this machine? Well, once again, about 4 feet drops off. And it'll also come out that distance out of the back of the machine. Now keep in mind that these electromagnetic fields, they pass through the walls, whether they're cement, steel, brick, sheetrock, glass, doesn't matter what it is. They pass right through. Another item that people use all the time are laptop computers. Now, this type of monitor, known as the panel screen monitor, is great. You notice there's nothing coming off of that monitor. And that also goes for television sets. The type of television that we just measured is the old type of set that are on their way out. People are phasing out that type of unit. The newer types are thin, flat panel screen monitors, and they don't produce fields. So that's 2 thumbs up for the new types of television. But what about your laptop? Here, right on the keyboard, you notice it's very high. It's hovering up there close to 100 milligauss. And also on your mouse, high as well. What about underneath? Most people sit this device right on their legs. Well, look at that. You're up there at 100 milligauss right under it. But as we move it away, it drops off fairly quickly. So just the distance of this laptop being on a table will protect you from the electromagnetic field. That's why I don't recommend putting laptops on your lap. Now you might say, well, you have to type on this thing, you have to use a mouse. How do you protect yourself from that? Well, what I do is I use a keyboard that plugs in to the USB. And this type of keyboard, there'll be no electromagnetic field. I also use a mouse that goes into the USB. And you're not going to get anything off of this type of mouse. I don't recommend the cordless keyboards or mice, because those are going to put out radio frequency as well as have an electromagnetic field. Once again, my keyboard here, very high. You move over here, you get nothing. The most important place in the house to check for electromagnetic fields is where you spend a lot of time. And with me, about 1/3 of my life, I spend right here in this bed. So I want to make sure that this bed does not have any electromagnetic field, electromagnetic radiation. So this is the way I would do an inspection on the bed. Go over the whole entire bed, especially where your head is going to be. Now, I built this house myself, and the way that I wired this wall here is I made sure there was no wires running through the wall, because the wiring inside the wall could sometimes create electromagnetic fields. And if there was a wire through there creating electromagnetic field, it would be getting my head all night long while I slept, as happens to many people. Let's see what happens when we bring this Gauss meter over at this electrical outlet. And you notice right up at the outlet we have a reading about 8 milligauss. And you move away from the outlet, it drops off really fast. So another thing we certainly don't want is have an electrical outlet right behind the wall where our bed is, because we'll be getting exposed to that type of radiation all night long while we're sleeping. Light switches can sometimes create electromagnetic fields. This one doesn't, but if we had a dimmer switch, the dimmer switch has a rheostat in it, and that will create a high electromagnetic field. You want to be a few feet away from any type of dimmer switch that you might have in your home. So there are just a few things that you can do during electromagnetic field inspection. Ideally, you go through the entire house, you look at anywhere where someone's going to be spending a lot of time, and you make sure that there's no electromagnetic field there. Let's say you do find a high electromagnetic field near a bed. In that case, you might find another part of the room doesn't have an electromagnetic field. So you can take that bed and move it to that part of the room, just simply rearranging the furniture. Other times you might find that there's a device such as a refrigerator or some other type of unit plugged in on the other side of the wall. And as I mentioned before, the electromagnetic fields come through the wall. So if you move either the device on the other side of the wall or your bed, so you have more distance between that device and where you're sleeping, that could alleviate the electromagnetic field. Other times you might have to actually go into the circuit breaker and shut that particular electrical circuit in order to make a very safe area for you to sleep in. Of course, if you do that, make sure you're not shutting off anybody's refrigerator, because in the morning you might have a little bit of a mess to clean up. I hope you learned something. Thank you very much for listening.
The sun is on the rise, so open up your eyes and drink it in.
If you can't get it, just keep doing it over and over again, and then shove it up by your monitor. Yeah, your monitor emulates 1, 2 emulates. Shoots out, squirts at you. I don't know what you want. I just made you laugh again. Anyways, serious things, and it does affect the body. Has an effect. But there's also the other part, food intake. Now, I've been looking at stuff for a very long time. I used my broken back, 2 back surgeries, L4, L5 fused together, 2 back surgeries fused together, and I felt like dumbfounded, like the second back surgery when she told me, because they were just going to remove the screw. And if she's watching this, don't feel bad. It was my fault for thinking it. Like, I had this whole thing like, oh, I'm going to heal really fast. She was talking about the stitches, and she's like, oh yeah, 4 weeks. And I'm like, 4 weeks? I'm like, all right, let's do it. And no, it was a whole other year, because they had a, yeah. Anyways, electrochemical, go to chemical. So with my back being broken, I sat there and got sick of TV and thought, what are we doing here? You know, those thoughts that let's go do something. I don't want to think that, you know. I just decided I want to see if I can make the world a better place. So I dug into every documentary out there and just try to get down to the core of why people aren't free. I don't know how to explain it, but I'll eventually get it out there. But I started looking at this stuff. I started looking at food. You know, all these pauses are me trying to get this together, because I don't like lying, and I like to get it accurate, because I went over it so much. and I can't spell the greatest, so this is all from memory. But strawberries, I know it sounds goofy, but if you go look them up, they're sprayed with copper. And you're thinking, big whoopie-doo. I'm going to try turning my camera so you can see my coffee can. Yes, my coffee can. Okay, now that's a coffee can. And it's got an end connector on it. And with that end connector, I gotta tell you, I'm gonna make you laugh anyways, and this is serious too, you can go type it in. That cord is hooked up to another cord. Actually, I don't know if this one is or not. Well, I'll just say it is, because you do have to get one if you do get a cord like that. It's called a pigtail. It has to match your card. But anyways, I would look into it though. You know, it's kind of like, oh, you're a hypocrite. But you see what I'm doing with my Cantana though. I'm doing this. Just made you laugh again. Anyways, so, Cantana end connector. End connector, little piece of brass. You have to solder something on there. And take a guess what that is. Copper. Oh, you're right. Good for you. So, copper. But they spray strawberries with copper. You're like, well, copper's in all food. But that's a huge one, you know. But the copper element that you need to solder on there, you need that to receive microwaves. Microwaves are all over the place.
The circadian rhythm is the day-night cycle that is engraved into all life. Over a 30-year period, the professor conducted experiments in which student volunteers would spend several weeks at a time living in the bunker, completely shielded from the natural resonances of the earth. In his results, Weaver noted some astonishing findings. He discovered that when Schumann resonance was filtered out of the bunker, the students' physical and mental health would suffer.
He took students down there. He didn't trust to do it with ill or old people. He took young students down there because he knew, Weaver knew that there would be an effect. So obviously underground you don't have Schumann resonance. You only have the transverse magnetic fields from in the earth. So by putting them underground, they started feeling sick, having headaches. Their circadian rhythm was completely upset. The interesting thing was, when he just introduced the 7.8 Hertz frequency with a magnetic pulse generator, that immediately stopped.
Weaver would secretly introduce the 7.83 frequency to the bunker via a man-made transmitter. Each time he did so, he noted the ill effects suffered by the volunteers either disappeared or decreased. Their stress, headaches and emotional distress was reduced, and their sense of well-being was restored. All by the introduction of Schumann resonance. Weaver's research had revealed an incredible connection between human health and the natural frequency of the planet. And in 2011, groundbreaking research suggested something even more impressive, that Schumann resonance could be connected to the beginnings of life itself. The breakthrough came at the hands of Luc Montagnier, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist who first discovered the HIV virus. The professor was conducting water memory experiments, examining how water could retain a memory of substances that had previously been dissolved in it, when he stumbled upon something that would challenge the very principles of science. All life comes from life. This is a fundamental principle of science, and one which has never been violated in any experiment. Life can only exist where life has existed before. And the mechanism for this has always been understood to be a material one, such as egg and sperm or spore and cell division. But Luc Montagnier's experiments have offered a very different hypothesis. The professor showed that DNA sequences, the very building blocks of life, communicate with each other in water by emitting low-frequency electromagnetic waves. Even when the DNA was kept in separate test tubes, the professor still recorded electromagnetic communication between them. How sophisticated could this communication be? Well, Luc Montagnier showed they are able to organise nucleotides, the ingredients which actually make up DNA, into brand new DNA. Science has combined these ingredients countless times before, but in no experiment have they ever been able to recreate the spark of life and transform nucleotides into actual DNA, not without DNA already being present. Life, after all, can only exist where life has existed before. But in Luc Montagnier's experiments, the DNA had been completely filtered from the water. Yet new DNA was still formed. Just how was this possible? How had Luc Montagnier managed to achieve what no other scientist could, and create life where no life was present? What was so different about Luc Montagnier's experiments? There was the presence of a frequency which, when removed, would cause the experiments to fail, but when present, would ensure that they would succeed. That frequency was 7.83 Hertz. Schumann resonance.
Like we said before in the book, electrical chemical. So, you're like, okay, you got the strawberries, you got the copper, Brian, where the fuck are you going with this? I hope no one was in the room that were underage. Sorry. I try not to swear. The only reason why I do is because I don't like the sound of little kids screaming. I don't. It's not good. Anyways, this is a little deep emotional side of me that I might let out little bits and pieces maybe. Anyways, now let's see if we can link this all up. I'm trying to be clever. I'm hoping I'm making you laugh and not going, we need to give this guy some help. Okay, we have the brain, electrical chemical. Okay, we have school food. We know, well, I don't want to bear any false witness. I remember low quality food. And then we have Wi-Fi. Now, and I don't know if it's still going to be there, but I do have a copy of it somewhere. It would take me a while to find it. It would. So if you do want it, you have to give me a long time to find it, because I'd have to dig pretty far for it, I think. But anyways, Wi-Fi in school, and school shootings. Go look them up. There's a linkage there, and then look up the linkage for cell phone videos and people in fights. It agitates. It does. Electrical chemicals.
Or people who are blind have different cancer rates than the average population. And most of those studies support the view that the absence or the lowered melatonin has an adverse effect on health.
Because the body only repairs itself at night, melatonin is only produced when the pineal gland senses that no light is present.
What happens is that the pineal gland is light sensitive. It's sitting right where your brain receives signals from your eyes, that crossover point in the middle. It's called the suprachiasmatic nuclei, and the connections from there goes directly to the pineal gland to tell it whether there's any light around or not. If there's light around, then there's also interference with the signals the brain wants to send to our cells in order to repair them. So it says there's no point in the brain sending these signals out to our cells to tell them to repair, because there's so much interference that they won't hear it. So it waits, the brain waits until it's dark.
What kind of research has shown that there's an effect on melatonin production from electric fields, magnetic fields, radio waves?
Right. Well, the Battelle Institute in America has done a lot of work on this way back from the late 1970s, in fact. And their scientists there, Barry Wilson and Dick Stevens and people like that, started thinking that because we know that if you turn the light on, then the brain stops making melatonin, they thought, well, maybe our brains can't distinguish between electric fields and that we make ourselves artificially, and the natural light that we all know happens during the daytime, because we just don't make melatonin in the daytime. For very good biological reasons. So they thought, well, maybe these electric fields.
I can't think of the other guy's name. He invented the neurophone. Make sure you're prepared to read about that. And that gets into other stuff too, like MK Ultra, and the Lily Wave is an important one.
What we're looking at here since we last talked is really an extrapolation, an extension, a continuing unveiling of the most sophisticated mass scientific mind control and social engineering that the world has probably ever seen and may ever see ever, because I don't think it's going to last too much longer before it comes down on itself. But the media, you remember when it was said that the Marshall McLuhan said the message is the media or the medium. Yeah. All right, well, it was TV. And just as some people were beginning to grasp the overwhelming power and influence and psychological, emotional, mental, spiritual subjugation of that media, TV, along comes the internet, which I think geometrically takes the issue of mass control and influencing that much farther. And then we can, of course, stir into the pot that cauldron of hell, cell phone radiation, electromagnetic fields, which literally drown us. We're living in a fishbowl. 150 years ago, there was no EMF to speak of, except for a few lightning strikes and maybe something from space that dropped in now and then. But we are living in an environment that the human body simply cannot adapt to quickly enough. And the controllers are, 20, 30 years ahead, 40 years ahead in some disciplines, maybe 10 years ahead in others. But the idea of controlling the human mind now is so advanced and so exacting, I'm sure it would have shaken Edward L. Bernays in his grave if he were to be woken and told about it. I mean, it's just amazing what's going on. You see that as well as anybody.
Oh, yes. I've been observing it for years, and of course, I've studied it extensively, and they took one of my inventions and put it under secrecy for years, because some of the technologies I've developed can be used for mind control. They can also be used for the greatest good that the human being has ever seen. That's always a two-edged sword, when you develop.
The human being will never see in this case, unless the planet is completely turned over and retooled to put good on the throne of evil. And I don't see that happening anytime soon, although I'd love for it to happen. I don't mean to sound negative, but it is what it is right now, and we are in the hands of people who do not particularly care about the value of human life, happiness, integrity, or anything else.
Well, that's true. And, it's Iblis fair seeming. All the TV shows and movies program people. They think that the darkness wins, and that it's good to have no integrity. The people with no integrity, they're always, they're rich, they drive the best cars, and they end up, winning and beating the other people out. So greed is good. And then
greed wins. Greed is good, and that message goes in on several levels. And remember, it is also being enfolded and embedded into the subconscious through these technologies we've briefly mentioned. We'll get into that more as we continue.
Exactly. Yeah, the technology is reinforced, so we're getting it subconsciously and we're getting it consciously on multi-levels. the TV sets scan rates and are designed to put people into alpha states or below and hypnotic trance, and then they've got the modulations coming from the Wi-Fi towers and the modulations coming in through subliminal programming on the TV sets, and then also through the power lines. There's plenty.
Now
of,
let me say one thing, and then I would like you to please tell us that anecdote again. That is a classic, and it's crucial, and it was many years ago. Now, the idea that the human mind is an electronic organism, an electronic machine, is certainly not what most people envision. They think we're chemical first, what we eat is crucial and all that. It is crucial, but we're electrical first and chemical second. And they, being the scientists who are behind this effort to control people, have decoded much, if not all, of the valuable parts of the human emotion spectrum. The emotional spectrum is known in terms of hertz, megahertz, and other kinds of electromagnetic radiation and frequencies, and can be programmed. We know that people who go near secure military installations will all of a sudden become very nervous and frightened and want to leave. They want to get the hell out of there. And that's because the frequency for fear is being broadcast on a perimeter basis all around that facility. This is really older technology. It's not new. Now, what Pat just said is critical. We all know about cell phone towers. We know about the Gwen towers. We know about satellite applications of electromagnetic fields. We know about the HARP program to pump up into the ionosphere tremendous amounts of electronic energy and then use that to beam back down specific and selected frequencies which can affect small groups or large groups of peoples and populations. But there's another main platform, a main venue, that these kinds of frequencies are actually placed into the human mind at very close range, and it's called the power grid. And Pat was the first one that I ever knew to figure it out. So tell us that story about how those nice, friendly 60 hertz wires in your walls and your 60 hertz powered electronic devices in your home can have a dual purpose at the very least.
Well, John Lilly was a good friend of mine. We worked together for the Navy on dolphin projects, and John Lilly developed technologies for bypassing the mechanisms of the human brain that resist programming. And he developed, I'll tell it this way. My friend Adam Trombley was also a friend of John Lilly's, and he was in Hawaii looking at the power grid, and there are signals coming in the power grid that have some ultrasonic waveforms and certain wave shape, and so Adam was looking at this grid on the power line, and I was.
He went over. He went over to Lilly's lab, didn't he? And there was a screen showing a waveform. Wasn't that the way it went?
Lilly walked into to Adam Trombley's house,
okay.
And Adam Trombley had the waveform up on the screen.
Oh, I see.
And John said to Adam, he said, "Oh, you know about my waveform?" And Adam said, "What are you talking about?" And then Adam said, "No, this is coming in on a power grid." And then John Lilly said, "Oh, so that's what they're doing with my waveform, the Lilly wave." And if you Google the Lilly wave, you'll find just one reference to it. But basically, it's a waveform that enables you to bypass the resistance of the human mind and program the brain. And you can transmit fear, you can transmit any emotion, any kind of information you want on the Lilly wave. And basically, Adam had discovered that they're using it through the power grid, and subsequently I've been all over the country, all over the world, and measured these things, and apparently there are black boxes in the power companies that produce the Lilly wave, and they're associated with, Homeland Security or whatever. And basically, these devices put ultrasonic waveform pulses riding on top of the regular 60 hertz wave. and they are mind control waves, and they're coming into everybody's house.
So the Lilly wave basically disarms the brain's ability to discern and decide. It just puts it in a neutral state where things just flow right in, much like the flicker of the old TV set will do. First time you watch TV, it takes about 2 minutes to get into that altered state. It's not beta, it's down in the alpha, almost theta range. You become really a zombie, and then after the first time, it's a matter of seconds. The second time you watch television, and you're taken right into that state where things can pour right into your subconscious mind. So the Lilly wave was used first to disarm the mind, and then your theory is, and Lilly's, and I'm sure Adam's as well, is that the Lilly wave was then piggybacked with any kind of known decoded electronic signature that would cause a reaction in the human brain and consciousness. Fascinating.
Well, that is correct, and we know the signatures for every emotional state. The signature of fear, the signature of bliss, the signature of anger. All of these signatures are very easy to duplicate, recreate, and you can, disarm with the Lilly wave. It goes right in, and then you put whatever you want in there, plus whatever subliminal programming you want. You can create unrest, you can create civil unrest, you can create riots, you can do anything you want.
And the amazing part about it is it can also disarm the brain to the extent that the other platforms, cell towers, the Gwen towers, HARP, can also pump up and pump out any number of electronic frequencies that will then have a free ride and entree right into the human mind en masse. This is not just an isolated issue. It's an amazing thing to consider. We are under such control and influence that the average American, the sheep, will never figure it out. Here's a little piece on the Lilly wave and why it is the wave of choice, the wave form of choice. The goal was to find an electric current waveform with which animals, that can be us, could be stimulated through implanted electrodes for several hours per day for several months, without causing irreversible changes in the threshold by the passage of current through the tissue. All right? Many waveforms, including 60 cycles per second sine wave current, could apparently be used safely for these limited schedules of stimulation. They could not be used for the intensive long-term schedule of chronic stimulation. Electric current passed through the brain can cause at least two distinct types of injury, thermal and electrolytic. The technical problem in chronic brain stimulation, and they're using electrodes in this particular study I'm reading about, is to stay above the excitatory threshold and below the injury threshold in the neuronal system under consideration. This result can be achieved most easily by the proper choice of waveforms and their time courses, and less easily by the choice of the range of repetition frequencies and trained durations. So they worked on this and came up with this final statement. The previous waveforms used in neurophysiology and in neurosurgery injured the neurons when unidirectional current passed through the brain. Dr. Lilly developed a new electrical waveform to balance the current, first in one direction and then, after a brief interval, in the other. Thus, ions moving in the neurons would first be pushed one way and then quickly the other, stimulating the neurons and leaving the ions in their former positions within the neurons. This new waveform was called a balanced bidirectional pulse pair, or the Lilly wave. Now, what we're talking about here is the Lilly wave has been introduced and basically piggybacked on 60 hertz AC, which is in every home, every office, every building. And the idea is that it transmits it. We do know from an electronic reading of any 60 hertz power box with a simple EMF meter, you can pick up electromagnetic fields 5, 6, 7 feet away. So people who are living in a box, in a hamster cage, which is a bedroom, an office, a living room, are surrounded with this stuff. And if they send the Lilly wave in, piggybacked on top of it with other, well, we won't call them control, but we can call them influential frequencies, we have the perfect way to directly affect masses of people in their homes, offices, and other structures where they hang out. Pat, go ahead.
Well, that is correct, and it's used in multi-levels. It's used in microwaves also. Microwave stimulation of the brain. The problem with stimulating the brain continuously with microwave or control frequencies is that you can cause damage. You don't want to damage people's brain unless that's your intent.
But they're doing a good enough job on their own.
Yeah, but basically the idea is to stimulate, transmit the information in, return the nerves to their former state, and then the brain doesn't resist it, because if the same signal keeps coming in over time, the body can develop a defense against it. The Lilly wave is a waveform that prevents you from building any kind of defense.